So what we do in our program, by the way, I'm Rochelle Seitz, for those of you who I haven't met, and I'm with the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, and we have an REU program that's been running for 27 years. So we're one of the older programs around, and so we've gone through many iterations of finding mentors and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And so hopefully I can impart some of our wisdom to those of you who may be a little bit newer at this. So we're able to ask for volunteer mentors for our program. We have about 60 faculty members at our institute, and so every year I ask for mentors, and I make sure they know what dates they're going to be responsible for students. I give them a link to the website to make sure they can get all of the details on what we do and what the program's about, and then give them the objectives of the program. Make sure everyone's on board from the very beginning of the process. Maybe we need to go. We're going to try and make it more intimate. All right.
There you go.
How about this? So let's switch off every couple bullets. So then we request that the volunteer mentors give us a title and description of their project, and they can have maybe more than one project that they have potentially in mind for the summer, and that's so that we get a good match of the students with the mentors. Yeah. I usually do it well in advance of the application deadline, so just so I know before we actually receive, our final applications, who I'm looking, what types of students am I looking for? Because we have many different disciplines in the ocean sciences. We have geological and biological and physical and chemical, and so depending on who my volunteer mentors are, I might want to get different types of students with different interests. So it's really important to know that ahead of time. So at least a month in advance, I would say.
So I would say that I typically send out a request for volunteer mentors, I would say in January, and our deadline is somewhere in the month of February. So to have about a month's worth of time, because everybody's busy, so they don't actually respond to you by your deadlines. So if you can give them 4 to 6 weeks or so to kind of come up with their potential topics and see who we actually have as our list of volunteers. We have another question.
Right.
I only have 10, by the way.
Right.
We have on the order of about almost a 1-to-1 with the number of REUs that we bring. So there is some volunteering involved, but it's mostly an expectation most people are probably going to be mentoring. So for me, it's important when we put out ads for REU internships that I have a good handle on what types of projects. It doesn't be that specific, but it's like I need to put that in there. So yeah, I try to get that in early January, so that way I can have plenty of time for the ad, have it up on our website when they apply. Because for us, it's really important that they match up very well. They don't have backup mentors where if I get the wrong applicants for it.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, it depends on what you have available, so we're lucky to have the 60. And also on our website, we have a listing of the potential mentors in our program who typically volunteer. So not all 60, our overall website has every faculty member, but our REU website has the mentors that typically are involved in the program. And in the application, we also ask the students to suggest a mentor that they would like to be paired up with. That mentor may not be participating in a given year, but at least then we know what discipline it is. Maybe a different mentor in the geological sciences could be pulled in if their particular first choice is not available. So.
We're in the second one. Or maybe third. Okay, so we're on bullet 3. So typically you want to find mentors who are particularly good with students, who have some type of track record in being very supportive of their students. So what I typically like to do is at either the end of the summer or the start of the next application period, I'll say something like, you were really great with such and such last year, and we really hope that you would be willing to participate again in our program this summer. So kind of reminding them that they actually participated before, that they were okay. I'm like, where is this coming from? Just kind of letting them know that we really like their participation and that we really want them to come back in and work with us again. And I should say, we hope that this is an open conversation. We kind of feel weird standing up here like we're lecturing to you, but we want you to chime in and say things. We have an hour. So
if anyone else has good information, chime in.
Those are great points. Great points.
Good point. And I was going to mention also, when I first send out the request for volunteers, sometimes I'll just get a reply, yes, I want a student. That's it. Yeah. With no, I've asked for a description, I've given them the website. And so, you do have to follow up with some of these people and maybe get a lot more detail about. That's a good idea, to get more detail on what a typical day would look like and what specific skills or coursework they might need.
So I typically add that information. We send out a form to our mentors. So, hey, you're interested? Yes. Okay, can you fill out this form and provide us with this information as soon as possible?
Couple hands.
We need to pass around the mic. So I don't specifically send it out to the mentors because sometimes they will pick students that may not fit your cohort that you're looking for. And so my selection committee and myself, we make those decisions, and I say, here's your student that we paired you with. But I know other people do send a poll to the mentors and they do it that way. So I think you have to find out what works best for your group. But I tend to try to have a very complete cohort that is representative, so I like to decide with my selection committee about this.
So, and as an alternative, we do sort of an in-between step. So I will select maybe the top 3 students that fit my criteria for my cohort. Maybe they're all underrepresented students, and then I give that to the mentor to make the final decision. So they can then look at the coursework and the other, they can send an email, maybe you do a phone interview and narrow it down to the one that they particularly want. Because I want the mentor to be very engaged, and I think they're happier if they know that they've helped select. I don't know about happier. I mean, that has worked for us, so I know there are other things. I think the hand back here was first.
We do the same thing as the inverse. I let them choose their top 3.
Right.
The second part about choosing a mentor, we try to bring some of our younger mentors on board, and we do that by pairing them. So that year they would do a share.
Oh.
That is, then we get that mentorship.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I try to do that within our labs. Try to encourage our mentors, our PIs, to have, if they have postdocs,
Yeah.
have them co-mentor with them as partners. But going back to, so the way that I do it is that I get it down to a handful that I view as being acceptable, and I actually encourage them all to do phone interviews. But they are not allowed to make an offer to anybody. Once they come back with their rank of their choices, then I use that information to try to put my cohort together.
That's a great point.
I have that same policy where I specifically tell them, you cannot make the offer, let me know if you're interested, and so I can have the final say. You know, if I need one more male in the program to even things out, then I'll say, no, you're going to have to go with your second choice, or, you know, I have the final say to round out the cohort. So it's, I think, a good way to, I mean, it's an important point, is that you want to have a certain number of, you know, underrepresented or whatever your goals are, and so as the PI, you want to have that prerogative to make the final decision. So it's a little bit of a balancing act.
In fact, you have some.
So I really work very hard to make sure interest in my students who might not be on the priority. And I know that I'm really slow.
Yeah.
But I do a lot of stuff on that. I just wanted to add, when I asked for information about projects, that I was really encouraged to ask about travel time. Because I've had a number of occasions where if you've got a great resource,
Yeah. So as long as someone is available for the student to reach out to, yeah.
just about always somebody is present. The first couple of weeks and the last couple of weeks are the hardest time.
And just and just to follow up on trying to get your best students, we also will do that if I got a number of mentors in, let's just say, one particular discipline, but I have a really great student in chemical oceanography and I didn't get any chemical oceanography mentors replying, I will seek them out and say, hey, I've got this great student, you know, do you think you could mentor them? And so we do a little bit of strong arming for the top students that we really want to accept in the program.
Carla?
The other thing with that is a lot of times we have our students rank what their interests are, so that helps us match. When we meet the students, we talk to them, they talk and say, yeah, I just had no idea, so yes. Oftentimes, if you get a really good student in the phone interview, you can say, hey, we've got this mentor who does this, would you be interested? And you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
It's true, sometimes they don't really know.
I mean, because a lot of times they're just picking things and they haven't had the experience.
We have a checkbox where they can check which disciplines they're interested in, and there's a range of things from, you know, geology to policy and fisheries, and some of them will just check all of them, and which is great. Then we know we can pair them with anyone, they'll probably be happy. So, you know, a lot of them don't know. I think there's someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do the phone interview part as a part of that. Usually after we give I give the mentors the top 3 students. They'll either email and narrow it down to 2 and then do a phone interview. But I think it's really important for the mentor to get that sort of one-on-one conversation going. I mean, it sounds like you're doing a lot of that part of it, but I think it's good so that the mentor knows, is the student asking questions? Are they really interested? What kinds of questions are they asking? And I think it really helps to maybe narrow down exactly who they want to work with that summer. So we leave it more up to the mentor. It sounds like you leave it much more up to the student. Right, from your checklist. Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing about that process is it allows us to make sure that the projects that the mentors are willing to supervise and mentor are consistent with the theme of the program. Like they often have broader interests than the ones that overlap with the theme of our program. So you can make sure that students are choosing among the projects that we feel this grant can confirm.
And so as you can see, if you are a new REU site, there are many ways that you can actually do this. So, so maybe just take into consideration just some of these different points that we brought up. And
let me just mention the last thing on this topic, and that is something that I think has worked out really well, is we have our mentors sign an agreement. It's actually a mentor-mentee agreement, so everyone's on the same page as far as how many hours the student's going to work in a day. I mean, it's sort of blanket. It's not individualized to each project. It's for every mentor and every mentee, so just everyone knows the commitment. It says I'll be accessible to the student for X amount of hours, and just that sort of thing. And I actually put it on the listserv site, our mentee agreement, mentor-mentee agreement. But if anyone's interested, I can follow up on that as well. But I think that's really important to make sure the mentors, if they're signing something and they know they have to be there and be engaged, and so does the student. Everyone's on the same page. Yeah.
We've been doing this together for too long. Okay. So, and we probably should move forward because we're running out of time. So. Rochelle and I put together a top 10 of ways that you can prepare and support your mentors. This is what we used last time. So
if you were here last year,
sorry,
it might be a repeat.
I guess I'll go first. And some of this is kind of connected with the previous topic, but to provide your mentors with a schedule and timeline of events so they understand, one, that this is a time commitment, and so that we're all on the same page, as we were just saying. So they know, here's everything that you can expect for the summer, the calendar events, where the student may be when they aren't actually in your research lab. Here they're doing a professional development activity or something like that. So just to make sure that everyone knows what the summer schedule is going to look like, when do we start, when do we end, where do they need to be if we have specific activities. And
very important that the mentors know that the students aren't there just for research, that there are program things. We have a typical Friday seminar. Every Friday the student's going to be involved in something. We have field trips scheduled. One of them's a 3-day field trip. And so the mentors need to understand the student's not just there for the research. There's program activities as well. And number 9, so I think we already mentioned this, encourage the mentors to speak with the potential students first to choose the best fit. So I think we pretty much went over this, but just to make sure those mentors are engaged.
And we've also done this. So to encourage the mentors to design both an educational but also a very useful project, to make sure that the scope is something that can be done in literally 10 weeks. And in some occasions, it's actually less than 10 weeks. It's more like 8 or 9 weeks because you present on your last week, that it matches your students' ability and your interests, that the project is going to be valuable, and maybe even sometimes they'll get a publication or something out of it. So you want to make sure that it's not just them, doing like a lab intern, but this is something like a collaborative research
washing
process.
Glassware.
Yeah, that's bad.
But also that it's right, that it's the appropriate scope so that they can be sure to accomplish something by the end.
So number 7 is to provide all of your mentors with a support network. So we have this multidimensional model of mentoring that we acquired from the SOARS program, where we have faculty mentors, research scientists, postdocs, and graduate students. And so our mentors actually asked for this, to have an opportunity where they could get together over lunch, kind of like a lunch and learn, to hear best practices of what they found worked if they've been mentoring for a long time, and just so they all can know who else is participating in the REU program. So they kind of have this home network of people. And specifically at our REU site at CSU, this is the only time that our faculty members really work with undergraduates, because we don't have an undergraduate program in atmospheric science. So we really try to encourage them to connect and to talk with each other, because these students are slightly different than their graduate students, and you want to make sure that it's applicable to their interests, their skills, etc. So we have frequent mentor lunches for the mentors to get together, as well as for the interns to meet some of the other mentors that are participating.
And just to add on to that, we typically will have a mentor, a faculty member, and then also a grad student who is helping out. Our institution is all grad students, so we have grad students on almost every project that a faculty member would be doing. But that, I think, helps with that networking. So the intern maybe feels like there's someone closer in their age, and maybe not as intimidating if they have questions or issues as the summer goes on. So,
yeah.
Any other comments? Yeah, we usually, I send out, when I send out my call for volunteer mentors, I usually give them the dates, the inclusive dates, and tell them that they need to be there for the orientation and the final presentation. But I don't give them the actual detail of the weekly events until we've matched that student with the mentor. I don't know, is anyone
I would say the same thing.
So, let's move on. Oh.
I don't know.
Did we do that?
I think we talked about that one. We can go to number 5.
Okay, number 5, encourage mentors to communicate regularly with their students. This is actually in our mentor agreement, where they have, it's expected that they'll communicate with their students. And so I think most mentors, if they're going to sign up and volunteer, they know that that's part of the program, but we just, we encourage it.
Can I ask what sort of frequency you include in that document for the engagement?
We leave it open-ended, but I don't know if...
I leave it open-ended as well, but I tell our students to, don't just sit here if you have an issue, like go talk to them more, and just you want to encourage more communication than less. And so you don't need to say every single day you should talk to this person, but if that's what you need, then you should do it. There is no strict.
Yeah, and we make sure in our orientation, we make sure that the interns realize that there are no dumb questions, that they should be asking all the questions they need to be successful and to have a good experience. So we try and outline that kind of at the beginning.
And again, if they have multiple mentors that they're working with, then they have multiple people that they can go and communicate with, and the whole mentoring team should all be on the same page communicating together. So that's just another way to kind of help move it forward.
I also encourage the students to talk with their mentors about how they like to communicate. We've got some mentors who would like to be sending an email with a hint of what the discussion is going to be, and I can schedule it. We've got other ones who are happy to be interactive throughout the day. So I encourage them to just realize that lots of people have got lots of different styles, and to just find out what the right style is.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
Okay, so number 4, to ask mentors to pay attention to your students' work and to detect problems. So let them know that there are many roadblocks that occur in research, and to kind of work together, even on your first day, to articulate steps in the thinking process, how you should move from day to day on your project, and to not be afraid, as you just said, to ask questions, because I found, you know, for one instance, this one student was too intimidated to go talk to their faculty member, so they just sat there for days. And it's like, you only have 10 weeks. Sitting here for a full day, working in your brain about, I can't figure out this piece of code or something like that is not going to help you. So really need to make sure, as a student, that you go and contact them, but for the mentors to really pay attention and to communicate frequently and openly with the student.
And just bouncing off of that, we, in our orientation, remind the students to just make the most of every single day, because ours is only a 10-week program. Some of them vary, but it really goes very fast, and we try and make sure they realize that from the outset, because, you know, it sounds like a long time, but when you get into it, it's not, as many of you know. Number 3. Encourage mentors to support their students' professional development. So there are, I'm sure, a lot of seminars and things that all of you are doing to encourage that, but also to informally sit down and discuss their career goals and introduce them to colleagues and you know, other sort of networking opportunities that happen on a more casual basis. So not just the career development pieces that you're going to put in your Friday seminars or whatever day you have them, but just those discussions, you know, in the hallway, over coffee, sitting at the lab bench, whatever it might be, about career goals. Any comments on that?
No? Okay.
Moving on.
Number 2, so to encourage your mentors to have the interns present and publish their work if it's able to get to that level to be publishable. We have all of our students, of course with the faculty's permission, allow them to go to a conference like the AGU or whatever your discipline-specific professional conferences to present their work. Just 1, to give them an opportunity to see what it's like to be at a national conference. 2, to see this is how we as scientists all communicate with each other and collaborate, and to show our research findings. So to make them feel and hope that they identify as being a scientist. So this is a way that they can to get that out there. Funding? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our program doesn't, but there are some programs like the ASLO MIMP program that you can send one of your students, you know, your top student, and actually they have funding for additional students. So for us, we don't have every student going, but we try to encourage it, and particularly if the mentors have additional funding and the student has worked on their project, we try to encourage it.
You can also try to utilize your matching
Yeah, from your university. Oh.
department or team.
Never done that.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. To it. That's a good idea. I've never thought about that.
Thank you for that idea.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
I mean, or a lot of the organizations have travel scholarships that you can encourage many of them to apply for, so then that's less of your own funds that you would have to use.
Just comment.
Yeah. I do go. No, I go. So they typically either go to the AGU meeting or the American Meteorological Society meeting, and I go to both of those meetings with them. I mean, I'm also presenting my own research as well, but. Mm-hmm.
So if I'm not with the student who's going to the ASLO conference, there's usually a lot of VIMS faculty there, so I sort of attach them with someone who can introduce them around and serve as a mentor for the conference, because it is helpful. But with the ASLO MP program, they have sessions, helping students network and so on. So it really is beneficial for the whole networking end of things.
And I'll say one more thing, and then I'll get to you. I also I host a dinner on the first night of the conference at each of the 2 places, so that all of our students from the current cohort who are there meet some of our alumni students, and then that gives them another person that they connect with for over the week that they're there at the conference, just as kind of setting up another peer mentoring role.
Great idea.
Where do you get funds for that? That doesn't come out of the REU.
No, that doesn't come. That's separate from.
Institutional institutions.
I just want to mention one thing, that if your program doesn't have money to support students at any conferences, you actually ask the student to check with their department head. If the student don't know the department chair, department head, they normally know if their school doesn't have the resources to
Just gonna add to
support the
this.
student shower. And I think normally in my case, we do have budget to support students to go to a conference, but it's not much. I told them that you guys should go to check out what the resources available on the campus. And then sometimes I personally don't like the idea that I do more for them, because they need to push them, ask them to explore something else. And then the best way to start is they can just go ahead and ask their advisor, just ask their department head, or they normally have the resources.
Can I add on to that? Is that you have to recognize that we're transforming students in the summer, and when they go back to their own institution, it's very easy for them to go back
Yeah.
to the rhythm of their past. And so to help that transition, it's helpful to mentor them when they return back in this new identity as a young scientist that can actively seek out student research funding to support them continue. So keep that in mind.
And just, I think, as part of what everyone's saying is, I always tell them, if you want something, ask for it, because you're not going to get it if you don't ask. But yeah, ask your department heads or other people for funding opportunities is a good plan. Is there one more follow-up?
I was going to say that most of the meetings, they also have student travel funds.
Yeah.
Tap into that. And
Yeah, they both do.
And the ASLO meeting, this next ASLO meeting, there's a session for undergraduates to present posters and hopefully oral song. So it might, be a next about that. But this is one just for undergraduate students.
They're,
And we're going to hear more about it later, but there is a great opportunity
Yeah.
to continue research in the new age.
I was just about to say that.
Costs you nothing.
Oh,
It's free. And, oh.
great. And so we're being
Oh, are we
asked
being recorded?
if you can just come to one of the mics. I think they're fixed now.
Yeah.
For your other questions, since we're being recorded.
Forgot.
So I know you're wondering, what is our number one mentoring?
What do you think it is?
What could it be? Remind your mentors that it's fun and rewarding for all. Some of them are, questioning what are they going to get out of it. It really is beneficial. It's a good two-way street for all the mentors. So some of them you might have to remind.
My question is kind of like that. So how do you handle mentor pushback that they don't feel like they need to be taught how to be a good mentor? I work with a lot of scientists who hadn't interacted with undergraduate students in a really long time. They're not, some of them, half of the pool are NASA scientists, and they don't want you to tell them how to be a good mentor.
We have, well, it sounds like Beck wants to. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you do have the overall say in
Yeah, we do.
who you accept as your mentors. If you don't think you can actually work with them and have them take your advice, that's one thing. But also, it's a little bit in the way you frame it. Like I try and say, just as a reminder, just keeping in mind that some of them have, been around longer than I have and probably do know how to mentor, but just to remind them, here's how we'd like our program to be run. They're younger students than you're used to dealing with, so just wanted to remind, kind of a subtle push might be the way to handle that.
So when you're recruiting or sending out your email for your mentors, or do you say something fancy? When I send out an email saying, come and you have a free student for the summer, I don't get any responses. Maybe the same 8 people.
Do you send like personal emails to them? Or is it like a blast?
Yeah.
So I send personal emails to each. I mean, I know it might be hard if you're at a huge lab, but I send personal emails to everyone and I say, you did such a great job with blah, 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 and we really would like to see you participate again. I mean, that's how I find you get better response. I think you guys want to say, and we kind of have to hurry a little bit. We have 15 minutes.
Okay, well, I wanted to ask about your number 2 point, which was the publishing, which we've emphasized, but it's difficult to get something publishable in a 10-week period, even if the student's only doing part of a project. And I wonder if anyone here has had success in sort of extending the research experience beyond the 10 weeks so that when the student goes back to their institution, they can still work on the project, maybe through an independent study with a professor at the institution. Any ideas about that is what I'm interested in.
We've had a number of students continue their project as their senior thesis, and that's ways that we've been able that they've been able to work with their faculty a bit more to then lead to publishing.
And one other way that's worked for us is having, as I mentioned, we typically have a grad student who's working with the faculty member, also working with the intern. And so if a grad student is working on it, often they can take the lead on a publication, and the intern might be a co-author on that. But we also do have some students that take maybe a data analysis piece back to their home institution and follow it up, the following semester, and then can make it into something publishable. But it can be difficult. Do we have another?
I was just going to say the same thing about the senior theses and honors. Every year for the last 5 years, we have these going home parties. And usually what it is the completing part of the project during that 10 weeks, but we can't get all explanatory dealt with. So they're taking back something, giving them more data, we show them how they're going to analyze it, and they have that to work up and try to work it out more completely.
Yeah.
Is there another comment?
Yeah.
I had a comment to address how do you get mentors to do training. I learned this and I apologize for those that heard it earlier, I learned this on one of the REU telephone conferences that Val set up. But one way to spoon feed it to the mentors is encourage them to attend as being part of the mentors for this summer, and encourage them to bring their graduate students that will also be mentoring the students, and then couch it to the faculty like, we need you to help train the graduate students on best mentoring practices. And then the faculty hear a little bit of the best mentoring practices themselves, especially mentoring practices for underrepresented minorities. So you can, in a sense, hide the training and couch it in the way of, you're helping to train graduate students, but we're also training you, but you don't know that.
Then they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we're running out of time. We're going to move on to our last subject, which is the overseeing the REU projects.
And so we're not going to go point by point, but I guess to highlight a couple very important things would be to have weekly meetings, since there's only 10 weeks, to try to have weekly meetings to touch base with your interns, because you don't want it to be getting to week 5 and you find out that they hate their project, they haven't made any progress, and now what do we do in 5 weeks? So I really encourage having weekly discussions. We have a brown bag lunch every Monday where everyone kind of just goes around the table and says a little bit about what they've been working on in the prior week and kind of some of the goals that they may have for this next week. So just so that we're all in open communication, and it also gives the opportunity for the interns themselves to hear what others are doing and even provide advice as to how they may approach a particular topic. What you want to highlight.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think has been really useful for us is a mid-program survey, and that goes, there's a separate survey for mentors and for students, and then you can sort of identify whether there are any projects, and maybe for that one student who didn't really feel like coming forward to you personally, if they write it down, it's actually on a written form that they hand out, that we hand out to them, and then you can see, maybe identify if there's a problem that you need to address, and also see if the mentor's vision matches with the student's writing. If the student's writing, I'm not meeting enough, and the mentor's saying, we're meeting too often, then maybe you need to step in and get them both in the room and say, hey, what are your expectations? So.
Do you have an example of that survey? Is that something else?
I do. I can share that on the Google Drive, I guess.
I mean, and sometimes I even just send a quick email and I just say to each faculty member, hey, we're 2 weeks in. Are there any challenges or anything that you've been experiencing over the last few weeks, or maybe your student's not coming to you to talk to you, or this is when you find out if the student and the mentor are definitely not on the same page, and so that's your opportunity only a week or two in to kind of see that there's a problem, figure out how we can work on it and how we can move forward for the future weeks.
I think we talked a lot about graduate student liaison, office hours. This is something that has worked for us, maybe not necessarily has to be the PI, it could be the TA, but just to have a set time to allow students to access someone if they do have an issue that comes up. The other thing I think is really important, before we have an oral presentation at the end, and before the oral presentation, we actually have 2 full days of practice presentations. I mean, everyone gives a presentation on the 2 days prior. The first one's just to their lab group. The second one is with their faculty mentor, as well as the other students, and we call that the dress rehearsal. And then by the time they give their final presentation, they are really ready for it. And you'd be amazed how much improvement there is over that time frame. And also that it makes them prepare their talk really 2 days in advance, and then they can polish it up. Because the final presentation is for the whole institute. We invite everyone, and you want them to be pretty well polished by the end.
I guess the one other thing, we say weekly meetings to touch base, but I also have meetings with the students where they can just come and just talk about anything. Like sometimes it's a very overwhelming experience coming into this new place, and sometimes you just need someone to talk to. So I try to create a very safe and open space for them to feel comfortable to come and talk with me, even if it's for 5 minutes or an hour or whatever amount of time you particularly need to debrief. Or events. Yeah. Oh. Sorry, Val. We're not following rules.
We keep a big bowl of candy in our offices to encourage them to stop by.
So I guess since we have only 5 minutes, if there's anything else that people want to bring up, please use a mic.
In the last 5 minutes.
Or stand up.
In the back?
So, instructions for presentations, I thought there were some pretty nice posters around that talked about that, so I thought I'd give a shout out to that. I saw. But one of the things that I was sort of surprised at when I started working with the students on presentations, and we had exercises where they would just do 1 or 2 slides. Their concept of feedback and ours was really wanted to hear, oh, okay, that was great, next. Yeah. And we wanted to say, good, that would be awesome if you did this. And I found that they were really not as comfortable with critical feedback, even if it was really positive. And we're told over and over again, this is how research goes. So I was hoping for some feedback on that.
So let me just mention one thing we do. We have our students doing a critical review of the presentation before theirs, and after theirs. So we, on a given day in their practice talks, and we have certain questions they have to answer. What was really good? What was really bad? How were the slides? I forget all the things that are included on that. But so they're critiquing each other. And earlier in the summer, we do a session on the peer review process where we tell them that you are going to get feedback. It's meant to be, constructive criticism. Here's the right way to do it, the positive and the negative, and don't take it personally. So that's how we do it. And
I think Beck was there first.
And we have quite a deep and meaningful conversation about the fact that as scientists, we're trained to poke holes in each other's research all the time. And I tell them that just about every scientist I know, when they get the reviews back from a published paper, first they cry, then they get angry, and then they're able to walk away from it for a couple of days, come back to it, address the feedback, and realize they have a much better program. And so we have a discussion about how it feels to take critical feedback, and also the fact that scientists have trained themselves to mostly give very critical feedback, and so not to take it personally, but that it's part of the scientific process. And I think that helps them to A, accept their feelings about that, but B, realize that it's part of their training.
That's a great point.
mm-hmm.
So one of the things I would add to the list, maybe you already do it, but we have, after 2 weeks or so, we have the students give 5-minute research PowerPoint proposals, but we do it.
Number 3, we skipped over it.
Yeah, sorry.
We do it with the audience consisting just of, all the REU students and the program co-directors. So it's kind of a closed.
Comfortable.
Okay.
It not only does the students present, it's some practice with public presentation.
But what we do is say co-directors or any mentor that happens to not make comments or ask questions until the REU students themselves. Everybody has a 25-minute time slot. The presentation takes about 7 minutes, and in a good year, we don't get to say the entire day, the whole day worth, and that lets them start to feel like they're part of the process of giving feedback, and makes it a lot easier for them to receive feedback. I don't think this microphone is fixed, but I could be wrong. Okay, so the other thing it does is it gives me material that I can use during an oral communication workshop later on in the summer, where I take one slide from each student's proposal presentation and use it to illustrate better and not so great practices for oral presentations. And the students, since everybody is having one slide reviewed, they're not defensive about it.
Open to it.
Yeah, and they're actually eager to criticize their own slides. So it turns out, and then in that workshop we actually do the revisions right there, and then I email that new slide to the student and say, if you want to use this in your final presentation, fine, and then think about making other slides like this one. But having everybody involved in the same level of revision, I think, helps.
Yeah, it's a great idea. We do a similar thing with the 5-minute research prospectus presentations, but we have the interns and all the mentors and co-mentors, grad students in the room. And we don't, it's not quite as strict about who can ask questions, but we say that each student has to ask at least one question during that time frame. So they know that they're supposed to ask questions and hopefully get over that fear of asking questions. Some of them are really good at it and will ask a question to every student, but those who are not so good at it, at least they get over that fear, and then you see them chiming in, later on in the final presentations. So, yeah, I think if there's a good way to encourage that, yours is certainly a good one as well. So,
one last microphone.
We do something very similar to that, but you said about the not quite students giving evaluations of the student before and after. We started there, and what I found was when I switched it to 2 before them and 2 after,
They were better.
the feedback they got was so much more detailed, because when there's the person right before them that's supposed to be commenting on it, they're thinking about
Their
talk.
presentation.
And after they finish their presentation, they're still thinking about their presentation. So moving it a little further away, it ended up getting much better feedback from the
Okay.
other students.
That's a good point.
Yeah. 2 before and 2 after.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll try that.
Well, this is a working PowerPoint, so if you have other thoughts, ideas that we should include on these, just let us know. And thank you all for a great discussion and comments. And sorry, one more.
Final comment.
I have a request for those in the room. We put a program handbook online on the Google site, and by putting everything down in words, it really made us focus on what are our objectives, how do we want to deal with mentors, how do we want to deal with graduate students, all of that stuff. It was this great thing. What we're looking for is to see some other program handbooks, if you have them, so we can continue. It's a working, fluid document for us. But we provide this to all of our mentors, to our awardees, and it sets standards, very clear standards. And then if we hit a problem, we can always go back, well, let's go back to the program handbook and see what we're supposed to do. So we're looking for other feedback. We're looking for other examples.
Great idea. Thanks. And I just wanted to say, for any of you just starting an REU site, I'm definitely open for any questions you may have to follow up. We don't have a lot of time.
Thank you all.
Thank you both.
Sorry that we didn't follow the
Okay, so it is, if you would look at your program, please, and you'll see that we're at 3 o'clock. Excuse me. So the key elements session is next door, over here. I believe, is this dealing with difficult situations in here? Okay. Let's see. Then we have preparing students for on-campus or virtual or conference presentations in room 2126. Administration of an REU and all that that entails in room 3150, which has a beautiful view of the area. And are there any other breakout groups that are interested in forming or? Nope, okay. So, Dave, are you going to come up and maybe, you know, I wonder if we could put 3 chairs up here for the 3 of you, potentially? Or how do you... Where what? I know, I just have to... Do you want to set up and... To come and gather on the front 2 tables or something? Yeah, so we'd like to get everybody closer together for this session and maybe move a couple of tables together This is a session on dealing with difficult situations in your REU.
Yeah, the first question is how many people are going to be here. So, how many tables should we put together? But it looks like we have 7. We have maybe 4 or 5 tables worth, which probably means it's not worth putting tables together. So maybe we can just pass around, sit wherever you want, and we'll pass around microphones. But since it's easier to pass them around if we're close, maybe I'll kind of sit at tables close to each other. And I'm Dave Careau. I'm one of the 3 leaders, by far the lowest ranking of the 3. And one question that we have to decide right away is, do we want to have a scribe and a reporter for this? I think, okay, I think we should have one, yeah. Val said it was optional, but I think it would probably be a good idea. Anybody want to do the reporting? Well, reporting to the whole group when we come back. We've got a scribe. Daphne, do you want to be the reporter? Yeah, so go up there and, okay, thanks. Let's see, how many workable microphones do we have? I have 1. Is there, okay, so 2, oh, and 3. So Daphne, maybe that one can be for this group. We can share, the 3 of us can share these, and you 2 tables can share that. Okay, so as I understand it, this is, we were not asked to put together any kind of presentation. So it's pretty much a freewheeling discussion. Whatever gets discussed in this room stays in this room and does not have to be part of the report. This is not recorded. So I don't know that we can assure confidentiality, but we'll try. We can all try. So Val said it was not. Maybe, yeah, okay. Right, and no. So every individual that enters into any of our experiences, we can just call John and Jane Doe, right? We don't, yeah. So I have not prepared anything. I can, and actually I volunteered for this mainly because it looked like Val was having trouble getting anybody else to volunteer to lead it. So at our REU and our field station, we actually have had very few difficulties over the years, difficult situations, but we have had a few. We occasionally have mentors and students that don't get along well. We can usually resolve that by just pulling them aside and having a private conversation and appealing to their better instincts. They're all good people and they can compromise if need be. The worst situation we had was a student who first was not gathering enough data or not working hard enough, so a slacker. We have very few slackers over the years, but we have had a few. And this student was not spending enough time doing the research, so the mentor was quite upset about that. And we sat down with him and said, we will send you home if you don't change to do this, this, and this, minimum amount. And what we also told him was that the mentor would be the sole decider of whether he was doing enough. And that got him to do just enough to not get sent home. But it turned out when he gave his final presentation, almost for sure, the data were falsified. They were much too clean. In field-based research, you almost never have really strong correlations. These correlations were stronger than any I have seen, and about behavioral data, which tends to be notoriously heterogeneous. So it was almost certain that he had falsified the data. At that point, we actually had no idea what to do. What we did starting the next year was say that students receive the first half of their stipend early in the summer. They receive the second half of their stipend only after they have completed the program requirements, which included a satisfactory presentation and a satisfactory paper, in which case he would not have gotten the second half of his presentation, but there wasn't anything else we could do at the time because we didn't have that in place yet. His mentor actually wrote to the two people who had written letters of recommendation for him and told them that she was certain that he was a very unethical scientist. The other co-director and I had talked about doing that and decided we didn't want to take the risk. But the mentor was upset enough that she did it. So it's the only really difficult situation we have had, and I'm not sure that we dealt with it very well, but I think especially the timing of the stipend, the second half of the stipend, we didn't have in place at that point, and I think it does actually help. We make it real clear at the beginning of the summer that the second half of the stipend is dependent on them satisfying the requirements of the program. I don't think that has prevented a lot of problems. I don't think we would have had many anyway, but we have had none since that started. So there are 2 other microphones. Does anybody else want to share?
I'll share one issue that we had that we never saw coming. We had a student, the REU program has very clear guidelines on the types of students. They have to be undergrads. There are all kinds of things. We had a student who falsified her